happen that in all of the work that we do with curriculum, with policy, and with creating school physical and social environments, we need to recognize what have been the barriers, what continue to be the barriers of certain groups of students not feeling seen, heard, and known. And the work has to continue to always be looking at who's not getting that and how do we help them to be part of this community. And the work that you've been doing with the group working on restorative justice is a huge part of that. And that's a huge part of the new code of conduct. And it's a complete mindset shift, as the students who presented helped us to understand. So that's the work going forward. And one of the tenets of our work is that students are partners in the work. And we're finding lots of ways to invite all kinds of students to be partners in the work of the school community.
BJ, correct. Thank you, BJ, for the question. So I'm going to set aside for a moment, but want to come back to part of what I will do is I will challenge publicly the concept that equity and academic excellence are somehow two different sides of something, because I find that deeply problematic and implicitly racist. First and foremost, as a board member, my role will be to ensure that our policies, that our budget, and that our governance, meaning our superintendent, are working together to do the following. First, the why. We want to ensure that we have a safe, healthy, and effective learning environment so that every human being who is in our schools, young people, as well as cafeteria workers, teachers, aides, every single person who's part of that can evoke their best selves and thrive. So, how do we do that? Well, here's what we're doing, because we need to know what we're doing in order to move it forward. How we're doing that. We're doing that in a few different ways. Well, we need to make sure that our educators, whether they're classroom teachers, librarians, aides, whatever the case may be, that they know how to plan using research-informed methodologies like backwards design, units and lessons and activities that are explicitly anti-racist and robustly inclusive. So we have that going on now. We have anti-marginalization curriculum writing happening across the district. We also need to ensure that our teachers and the other people who work with our young people are able to facilitate learning those units, lessons, and activities in ways that are culturally and linguistically responsive. And so we have another strand of professional development happening, which is classroom coaching on what's called CLR, or culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. We also need to ensure that we're not doing this work in isolation, but through partnership. So another piece of the professional development that's happening is around family engagement. And teachers can earn micro-credentials if they do a deep dive into that and really learn it. And then the fourth thing that we're doing is helping teachers to explore their own identities and the multiple identities of the young people that they work with through another strand of micro-credential that's focused on identity. So I'm going to not only know what's happening, but then bring all my experiences to leverage to help move that work forward, identify challenges, share my best ideas about how might we make work through that, and then try to bring people together to figure out how to do that. So thank you for the question.
Thanks. Okay, so just to dial back to just something that Barry said, that yeah, and I don't think that equity and excellence are two different sides. I think actually that was my point that I was trying to make on curriculum this year, that that they are two different, they can be two different aspects, and I feel like the aspects have to be considered at all times. And the way that I kind of imagine it, and people have different philosophies, but I kind of see, in an anti-racist curriculum that focuses on equity, making sure that people don't feel marginalized, making sure people feel included, making sure, teachers are hired that have cultural competency. In clinical psychology, we've been kind of talking about cultural competency for a really long time. And that sort of sets the stage philosophically to to what a school has to be like. In other words, everybody has to feel included, people can't feel marginalized. And then, I think ideally, in that climate, we want to see students succeeding. So, we have different ways we can look at that. So one thing we talked about this year a lot was the number of students, or black students, who are getting into algebra, for example, in the middle school, or the number of students who are meeting standards, or the number of students who are passing ELA and math tests. And what I think I'm noticing is that when we look at some of these populations, or if we look at, let's say, black students or students of color, we have several schools where students are struggling a little bit more. And what I would want to do as a board member is really focus efforts to make sure that all students are meeting standards and improving the areas where people might be struggling. I think it's really important that when I say that none of that should feel threatening to an anti-racist curriculum that focuses on equity. It's just a question of, are we implementing the policies in such a way that it translates to success on tests and outcome measures? And we can say, well, we don't want to teach to test or worry too much about tests. But in our society right now, tests are important. And, there was a period of time where it was like getting dialed back and SATs weren't being looked at and colleges were dropping them, but now they're coming back. And so I think it's really important that we can have the policies that are already in place that are promoting equity and make sure that those policies are leading to good outcome measures in academics. And these academic outcome measures are standards that are set by Albany in New York State, and we're a state public school, and so I feel like we need to meet those standards. So to me, it's very, very important actually, to see some of these things improve.
Again, I appreciate the question. It's a serious one. And the joy I feel sitting here looking at YouTube, knowing that I had a hand in creating the village 20 years ago, so YouTube could sit here and do this, is a little overwhelming. I've been trying to hold back my tear. All right, so this is a community issue that you're communicating to us. This is not simply a school issue. This community is reflected in what happens in that building. What happens in that building is reflected in that classroom. What happens in that classroom affects the two of you and your colleagues. Almost everything that has been said of you so far, I also take pride in knowing that I had something to do with the creation of it. I spent my first several years on the HR committee as a board member trying to define a consistent way that we would look at the kind of teachers we were hiring. And what we landed on back then, which Maura and other people on HR moved forward, were classroom management skills, subject matter expertise, love for children, and several other things. Now, when we are reviewing teachers for tenure, it's a pretty serious effort. The building leaders and department heads know that we're very serious about who we're going to invest $1 million in. I spent the next several years on the curriculum committee. And we evolved from just analyzing elements of what would be rigorous, what would build relationships, and what would be relevant, to the 3-year plan that we're implementing now called Learning Forward, which includes significantly student input. It is critical that we not be critical in demanding our teachers see you to walk in a room and automatically expect you to be brilliant. And this district has struggled with that within 30 years I've lived here. When I raised my two children, who graduated in 2000, 2001, the youngest one came home and told me one day, "You send me back to that high school, I'm going to kill myself." That's when I realized how serious it was and I should get involved in what was happening in the schools. And I was appalled that when I ran for the first time, 50% of African American students graduated, and the kids with IEPs who were graduating were even less. So we've initiated God knows how many programs to support you two in your efforts. But frankly, I am realizing that we may need to expand our efforts in what we consider equitable. Now we have African American children who express different gender identities, who may also have physical therapy issues, right? Who also may not be non-communicative, who also may be from a dual family home up in Cayuga Heights. So this balkanization that I've been witnessing in our community, we're going to have a serious discussion about what we mean, right? Equity now, to me, means every child. Seeing every child who walks into a classroom as a potential genius and a benefit to our society. And right now, that's not where we are.
Thank you, BJ, for getting up here and asking this great question. So I think I come at it from a little bit different perspective, but from my, I guess not much better way to say it than, I have, as a white male, privilege. I've always had privilege, and I think acknowledging that privilege is a first step for all of us to really begin to engage in the conversation, and to also acknowledge our humanity and how we can support each other in community here in Ithaca. From my experience, I was in Peace Corps for 3 years. I lived in an Black Indigenous village for 2 of the years, and I worked in the school. And I saw kids who couldn't read and write, of course, all the way to 6th grade. And I also saw that from 1st grade to the 2nd grade, all the kids were really excited and happy to learn. And then 3rd grade, they started to drop off. 4th grade, they started to lose hope. 5th grade, they didn't care anymore. 6th grade, they knew they would never get past 6th grade. And that was shocking for me, to work in the community for 2 years and just see kids go through and drop out at 6th grade. And it brought me to moving back here after being out of the country, living in various cultures for 8 years, and seeing that we have similar type issues here in Ithaca. And that's really one of the reasons why I decided to run. And so really what I would say to you, BJ, is that we need to listen to you, we need to understand, and we need to actually implement the code of conduct, but link it to the policy that the board has, update the policy, so that we can actually have teeth in that. If we're gonna pursue any anti-racist, or we're gonna continue with anti-racist curriculum. Not only that, I think we need to also look at how we can be trauma-informed, and integrating that as professional development into the classroom, because we have a huge socioeconomic divide, and we're very diverse, but at the same time, if you look at Enfield as an example, because I can speak to Enfield, we have immense low-income situation there, and a lot of students open or allow. So we have a higher need there, and we need to really focus our time and energy to support those teachers and those students, so that they can achieve whatever it is that they hope to achieve in their academics and life. So thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
We're going to start with Barry, and we'll go this way, so move back, so more will be next. Sorry. Please name one strength of our district, one challenge we currently face, and how you plan to address this challenge as a board member.
So one strength of our district is I believe that just about every human being who works in our school has decided to do that because they want to do right by young people. That is why they got into the business. They didn't get into the business, I don't think, to become rich. I think they did it because they care about young people. Connected to that, that's probably one of the biggest challenges because so I taught for a long time. I came into the profession wanting to do that. And my first couple of years were terrible. I was just not good because I was very young and I had never taught before. And quickly I started to become frustrated. And the more frustrated I became, the less capable I was to be patient and understanding and figure out how to reach children. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have, certainly as board members, is to ensure that our budget and our policies and our superintendent are doing everything we can to ensure that the teachers are able to learn the understandings that they need to have, the skills that they need to have, and the habits of mind and behavior that they need to have to actually reach across and partner with young people and help them learn. So very specifically, this alludes to what Eldred said. I can't teach you if I don't believe you are intelligent. And I can't teach you if I don't believe you are capable of learning. And if I'm not going to do serious implicit bias work and unlearn all my stereotypes and myths and misinformation about people who are not white Barry Durfel from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I need to be able to unlearn all those stereotypes about black folk, brown folk, other folk of color, about people with disabilities, about people of different orientations, different genders, with economic security, without economic security. I have to learn all that. And I have to learn all that through the lens of teaching people. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that this work not only doesn't stop, that it moves forward unapologetically. So, thanks for the question.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I think one strength of our district, which also becomes a challenge, is that we have a invested, deeply concerned community that care about education and care about our schools. That becomes a challenge when people have different perspectives and beliefs about what the schools should be doing and what the schools should be like. And part of that also comes from people have different contextual experiences. We have older people who sometimes feel like, why can't the schools be like when I was at school? And it's a different world. So that's a strength and a challenge. And similarly, I think a strength that we have is we have a really incredible group of people working in this district. And I especially feel that we have a leadership team that has a bold vision for this district being an anti-racist school district, and that means dismantling systems that have historically and continue to marginalize all kinds of groups of people. So, having that vision and commitment and deep commitment at the top, and it also inspires people all throughout the district in every area of our staff who also believe in that. And that to implement this vision, the district has been really committed to professional development and supports. Every day I get a call from Boston, Massachusetts, that from some number that is not somebody I know. Somebody could probably tell me how I could block that. But anyway, you know, I'm talking about both vision and I'm talking about a really robust program of professional development that, you know, and I've been part of that, where our professional development is collaborative. It's focused and it's collaborative. And Barry mentioned some of the professional development that goes on. We have long had a program of therapeutic crisis intervention training. We have long had a program of, you know, we're now working and have been for several years developing anti-racist curriculum. So when people participate in that, they come out inspired and desiring to go in and do the work.
I'm so sorry. You said strengths and weaknesses. What the weaknesses was the second one? Thank you. Strengths. Our teaching staff are amazing. I feel extremely lucky that so many of them are sticking around. That so many of them are dedicated to the work that they're doing and to the way that they're supporting kids in our district. I just couldn't be more grateful for that. I think that I'm seeing a lot of that in the way that they engage in the kind of teaching that they are being asked to do in this district. And I love walking around our school and seeing the kind of artwork that is hanging on the wall that's representative of different skin colors and different gender identities and different backgrounds and autism awareness, and helping kids really understand who they are and how they fit into the diverse community that we live in. I think it's amazing. I'm very happy and excited about being in the school buildings and being able to see the way that teachers and students engage with one another and the things that some of our kids are having an opportunity to learn and engage with. With that said, I also think that our greatest weakness is that we are not holding the district accountable to fulfilling its promises to meeting the needs of our community. I want to see the district finally engage in true, honest, open dialogue with the entire community, to be responsive, to be respectful and transparent in the way that they communicate. I want them to be able to answer questions with real data, with real information, with real honesty and openness. And I truly think that that's the biggest struggle that we're facing in our district right now. I also want to hold them accountable to the impacts that they're having on student achievement and success. I want to see the data. I want them to be forthcoming with the information about what the impacts that their policies are actually having. I think that we have a lot of really laudable, commendable policies coming from the district, and I have a lot of questions and doubts about the impacts that it's actually having, especially on student success and on keeping teachers in the classrooms and wanting to stay and remain in this district. I also want them to be spending more responsibly and to be more responsive to the community and their concerns around that. And finally, I want them to be more accountable to trusting the teachers that they choose to put in our buildings, and to provide them with some of the autonomy that they need and deserve given their expertise in order to be able to support all of the students in our districts.
I definitely second everything you said about the teachers. I think we have some of the most amazing teachers. We're very fortunate to have a district that's, has the teachers that we do. I think for me, like, the first thing that came up when I heard the question was, I love how diverse the community is. The schools are a reflection of the community, and I attribute a lot of my experiences and perspectives to just growing up in Ithaca, and I'm so fortunate and blessed for that. And someone that's traveled a lot and been to a lot of other cities throughout the country. I really recognize how lucky I was to grow up in Ithaca. Again, for me, like, I am not up here because I have any real experience with education or educational policy or platforms or anything like that. Like, that is just not my wheelhouse. So, for me, it's like the opportunities that I see are, through the lens that I know, which is, on the construction side of things, the capital improvement side of things, just knowing some of the contractors that do school projects and knowing that they joke about how school projects are gravy and the amount of money that they make off them because no one's managing them and no one knows how to like control them. And that's where I think I can create the most value. When I think about like this board, I feel like a fish out of water up here. And it's I feel like vulnerable. It's like a little intimidating because I hear like how eloquently everyone's speaking about education, all this stuff, and like that's just that's not my area of expertise. I think about it in terms of like you're trying to build a football team. You don't need 9 quarterbacks. And I feel like I'm up here trying to compete with like Tom Brady and like all these like really amazing quarterbacks, but like I want to be on the defensive line because like that's what I'm good at. And if you want to have like a really solid football team or whatever team, like you need to have different people that have different skill sets. My skill set is construction management. And just like anecdotally, we just finished a project up on South Hill. I tell everyone the story because it just kind of like puts things in perspective. The fire code changed. When we finished the building, we had to put in this new BDA system. No one's ever even heard of it, but this new BDA system to help the firefighters' walkie-talkies, communicate better. The architect's like, there's only one company that does it. We get a bid from them. It's $380,000. I look at the bid. I look at like the amount of low voltage wiring. I'm like, we have drop ceilings. We don't need to retrofit anything. Like this number doesn't make sense. It's BS. So I was able to go out. I found a low voltage contractor. Who's licensed, certified, qualified to do it. And we got it done for $120,000. Had I listened to my architect, who's super reputable, who was like, yep, this is the best company, you gotta go with them, $380,000, we would have spent the money. But instead, it's like, I have the skill, I have the experience, I have the knowledge to understand like how to analyze these things and look at it and know what's right and what's wrong. We're able to go out and find it and get it done for $120,000. Like, that's just like one example. So for me, I see the opportunity that I bring, again, is to like help the school district save money because we spend tens of millions of dollars a year. And if we can save $1 million a year on capital improvements, on facilities and things like that, again, that's money that goes back in the budget that helps all the Tom Brady's over here do what they do in the schools. And again, like just put me on the defensive line and let me do what I do. So, thank you.
I love that analogy.
Thank you. I just put me on the spot. I don't know how to define myself. So.
Todd, I was a tailback in high school. This is on? Okay, good. All right, so thank you. Todd, that was funny. All right, so I guess just to talk about the strengths, I do want to echo it's the teachers. I mean, that's why I'm here. I went into school and spoke with the teachers, especially when I was facing this the issue with my daughter where she was physically assaulted. We needed to go in and work it out. And then I was also told about some other issues and concerns that I noted in the school. And that being that there was another class where the kids had to evacuate 3 times a day due to the kids throwing chairs and disrupting the classroom. And it got to the point where the parents and the teachers were crying out at the administration to get them to listen, and nothing happened. And this went on for over 2 months while the kids in the school were traumatized. All of the other kids were affected, and in that classroom, leading up to a teacher getting physically assaulted and she no longer working. And I think that has something to say about what we're doing and where we're prioritizing our time. We hear about this over and over again in different schools, in different classrooms. And really, there is a concern that I have and it could be related to mental health, it could be related to teachers not having adequate, whether it's trauma-informed training or social-emotional programming that we should consider it being not just an elective that the teachers can pursue, but something that if we really want to address disciplinary issues in our school in a productive way, teachers really should be aware of how to manage it, because some of these teachers were not necessarily prepared for this situation. So that is what I would say is a challenge. But I also think there's a lot of support in the community, there's support in the